Hello, and a huge welcome back to Teach and Flourish, the podcast. Today, I would love to chat to you about teacher burnout and using the analogy of cultural burning with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here in our mother country, Australia. So, if you haven't already heard, I am writing a book about teacher wellbeing, teacher burnout, and we're still not 100% sure on the title, but this has been probably in the making for about 4 and a bit years. I left the classroom in July 2020, and we are almost at a point where it's been 4 years. And I think it's a conversation that needs to be had across Australia, across New South Wales, and probably in many parts of our world, about why our teachers are continuing to become so burnt out by the system. What are the causes of it? And look, we're going to talk about lots of the solutions in my book, but also on our podcast together. But this all stemmed from a conversation I was having with my editor probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Our initial conversation about teacher wellbeing in the book, and our approach to starting to dive into the content of the book. And I was sharing my story with my editor, and we were having a conversation around, the title about being burnt out and, being not broken by the system. And then this kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole of me using the analogy of like wildfire. That, I've kind of risen from the ashes like a phoenix. If you have, Harry Potter, that scene where they're in Dumbledore's room and the phoenix kind of shrivels up and then it is rebirthed from the ashes, if you know Harry Potter. But using the analogy of being burnt out and coming up from the ashes kind of resonated with me a lot. And then I said to my editor, Nat, that, in a lot of the work through Aboriginal culture and spirituality, that they would use fire to burn certain segments of land. If there were, if they wanted some regrowth in certain areas, they would often burn parts of that land to then regenerate, some crops and grasses, some herbs. And then animals would kind of come back to that area and they would feed off those small grasses and herbs and shrubs that were starting to grow, that new kind of growth from the ground. Animals would come to the area and then Aboriginal people would hunt the animals and then get access to the berries and things that were growing from those low grasses. Anyway, we then kind of went down a rabbit hole of me doing some research, which I spent most of today doing. So I'd love to share that with you using the analogy of fire and teacher burnout. So I always think that many teachers not many, but a lot of teachers have probably experienced some sort of burnout in their career. I know for me, my first kind of burnout story was probably around 2008, 4 years into teaching, when I decided to take on a role in our Catholic school to put a whole big workshop, a dance and drama production together called the Rocker Stedford in the 90s, and then it went kind of in the early 2000s. I did Rocker Stedford in high school for myself as a student for about 4 years, and then I wanted to do that with our students at the school I was teaching at. And I probably didn't know it at the time, but by the end of that year, by the end of 2008, come September, just after the grand final, our kids got into the grand final for the Rocker Stedford, which we were super proud of. But in the September holidays, I was probably the most unhealthiest I ever have been. I wasn't sleeping properly. I had put on a lot of weight, and I'm a very fit person usually, doing lots of sport. I would have played netball that year, but I was feeling very sluggish and I was very overweight. That was probably my first burnout. Then 10 years later, when I decided to move from Sydney to the Central Coast, I went from working 2 days a week in Sydney and doing other opportunities and other professional learning for other organisations. So I kind of had 2 days a week in a school and then a couple of other days here and there doing professional learning. I was doing too much. I was wearing too many hats. I started at a new school, a new system, got the job as relieving head teacher PDHPE and relieving head teacher Wellbeing. I was doing too many things, wearing too many hats. Come July, I got shingles because I was so burnt out by what I had done to myself and all the pressure I felt to do everything and to be everything to every person. My third burnout story was at the back of COVID in 2020 when I came back from school after COVID. Around May, I could start to feel myself a pinch in my neck. I would kind of get so stressed. I had lots of people around me that made me feel like that, and I wasn't very supported. I said to my colleagues at the time that I feel like I'm under a lot of pressure. I feel really stressed. And they kind of fobbed it off. They didn't really listen to that. That was my cry out for, I need help, a bit of a white flag. And I went on leave for 3.5 weeks. I was done. I was so burnt out by the system, by the people. I decided to leave the classroom. And I kind of went into term 3, and I didn't return to school. So look, I know that burnout happens to many people, and teachers are ravaged by that fire that destroys the environment around them when they are so burnt out. The fire starts out quite small flames, and then completely engulfs teachers. And, people have had to go on leave with shingles or pneumonia, taken extended leave, or in some circumstances, see psychologists, because of maybe the anxiety or depression that they're feeling, trying to get help from that. And some teachers decide to leave the classroom. And I'm one of those teachers. I am a statistic, and that was never the intention for me to leave, but I left the classroom because I was so burnt out. Anyway, when I was going down this path today of listening and watching and reading, I came across a really awesome documentary, I suppose, a little snippet from ABC, and they were featuring a few Indigenous fire practitioners going through the Torres area around the bushfires probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And Victor Stephenson, who is an Indigenous fire practitioner from a company called Fire Sticks. He works with Aboriginal Land Council, Land Care, lots of different organisations around Australia. And he said something really powerful in the little snippet they were doing for ABC. He said, we know that we could prevent it if we look after the land. And I see the land as being us as educators, us as teachers. If we look after the land, if we look after educators, then we could probably prevent a lot of the burnout that happens, a lot of the fires that happen inside a teacher. We can prevent a lot of these things happening. And I think this rings true in teaching so much. If we truly protected the land, if we truly protected teachers, we could prevent their burnout. Because when there's fire, there's complete devastation, not just to the landscape, but to the environment around teachers. And I know for me, when I became so burnt out, it wasn't just affecting me physically. I had a pain in my neck. I had 2 pains in my neck that I was working with, and my principal supported their behaviour. But my own home environment became affected by that fire, by that burnout. I would come home crying. My husband, probably Daniel, didn't really want to hear me complaining and being upset every afternoon. And I was really short with my kids. And the girls, our children at the time, would have been, I don't know, maybe 10 or so, 10 and 7 at the time. And it wasn't fair on them that I was coming home so stressed, so burnt out, that I took it out on them. It wasn't their fault at all. And I think that when there's complete devastation by a fire, we see that devastation to the surrounding areas and their surrounding environment. And like I mentioned, it has parallels with the destruction that burnout has. And it impacts not just on families, but on the kids that we teach every single day. And in some of the conversations that I watched on this ABC documentary, another guy, Glenn Wilcox from Bega Local Aboriginal Land Council, was talking about Mother Earth, and he said, "My land is my mother. She looks after us, so it's only right we look after her." Again, those parallels to teaching, that we often don't care for the most valuable asset in our environment, which are our teachers. And I think it's so important that we're looking after those teachers and looking after teacher wellbeing, because if teachers are feeling so stressed, they need the most care to support them and to protect them. I know at the moment we are in term 2, it's winter here in Australia, and teachers start to feel that pinch again at this time of year. And I know for me, it was this time of year that I started to feel, well, I would have been on leave 4 years ago, sitting on my lounge going, I've got no idea, like I have no strategies, I have no way forward. The only way forward that I see is actually leaving the classroom. And if teachers keep making those decisions that they feel like they don't have strategies, then, and the only strategy is to leave, then those statistics about teacher burnout and about teachers leaving the classroom and the vacancies we see around Australia and across the globe, that is going to continue. If teachers are still so burnt out by the system, by the people around them, then we are still going to see those numbers drop in teaching and education. And look, when I was doing my deep dive and my rabbit hole of looking into some of these articles about cultural burning and fires and what used to happen, 60,000 years ago, there are so many parallels to teaching. They spoke about this weed, I think they called it bracken in the bush, and they said it kind of comes into the area, it takes over, it's really destructive, it acts like as an invasive native where it starts choking out that area. So it kind of infects that area, it starts to choke out that area, it then starts to choke out another area. It then becomes, the area becomes engulfed in this bracken, this native invasive plant. And in the conversation that I've been having recently with teachers, I really think there are a number of people, either principals or leaders, that are like the bracken in our bushland here in Australia. They come in and they choke the teachers. They choke the good things, the good nourishing parts of our environments in schools. They start to choke the good things that happen in our schools. And there are lots of my teachers who have reached out to me recently about this happening to them. Some of our young teachers potentially working so hard in their faculty or in their school to then be kind of pushed down and I suppose choked and prevented from flourishing and thriving. They're doing all the work. They're doing their programming, they're doing their reporting, they're doing really great things in the classroom, but their head teacher or their leaders are choking them and preventing them from flourishing and thriving. And that makes me so angry to think that there are people doing this to other awesome educators who absolutely love their job. And it's a mismanagement of schools that then creates that choking amongst our teachers. And I think teachers lose a lot of their identity. And I think when I was watching and reading, Dan Morgan, another Aboriginal worker with the local land services, mentioned this idea that when there is mismanagement of the land, when there's mismanagement of the environment, the area loses its identity. And again, those parallels to teaching, that when teachers are so burnt out, when teachers are choked and prevented from flourishing and thriving, they lose their identity, and it often is that mismanagement, because teachers should have that richness. Teachers should have that growth, that greenery, that flourishing in their environment to do the job and to care for the young people that are in their care. And again, going back to what Victor Stephenson said, so Victor is a specialist in Aboriginal burning and works again with lots of land councils and land care across Australia. And he says, we know it shouldn't be happening. We know that we prevent, if we prevent it, if we actually look after the land. We need to look after our teachers, because the environments that they're currently sitting in our schools, some of them are very destructive. Some of them are causing them to leave the area, leave the classroom, and we need to do so much to help protect them. Good management of land, good management of our teachers enables them to get back that healthy country, to create that safer environment for them to thrive and to flourish. And in a lot of the work that I was looking at today, they talk about quite a few different creation stories around fire. And one of the creation stories that they speak about is that campfire or fire helped to bring people back to life. So fire is often associated with growth or, death. But I think that idea that fire is associated with bringing people back to life is a really great message for our teachers. And I see that kind of those parallels again with what happened to me in my experience in my journey as a teacher, that I was so burnt out that I didn't know how to show up. I was so burnt out that I didn't have any strategies to stay in teaching, to stay in the classroom. But the growth and the flourishing that happened after that, it was like a massive wildfire kind of came through and gave me so much fuel to that fire and made me grow and become such a stronger leader, such a stronger educator, that I never wanted any other teacher to experience what I was. So all of the resources and our master classes and our memberships inside what I do with my teachers inside the Learning Network and PDHPE.net and my work with teachers on their own wellbeing is a way to protect you, so you never feel like I did. But we've got a long way to go, because just last night, a young teacher messaged me about how she was feeling at this time of year when subject and new classes get announced. And she's told me that she has been prevented from being on a class that she's done all the work for. Now, I don't know the nuances of the school or what's happened, but there are stories like that where people are choked out, where people are prevented from doing what they rightfully should be doing, because they've put the hard yards in and they're the ones who are behind the scenes working. But for some reason, that toxicity of schools or that demoralization happens in schools, and it's really disheartening. And I think it's really about us working together as a community, as groups of teachers, to lift each other up, to work together. Again, going back to some things that Victor said in this ABC talk, he mentioned this idea about healing country, so healing the land and healing people. He said we can't heal country if we can't work together. If we can't heal country, if we can't work together. And this is our rehabilitation as teachers. We have a collective responsibility to work together, to rise from the flames and go, you know what? You're not getting to me. You're not going to prevent me from doing my good work as an educator and as a teacher, because I love what I do. It's so important for our teachers to work together, to heal together, and to flourish and to thrive in what they love and what they do. If teachers continue to flourish and to flower to restore teaching to what it should be, imagine the landscape of education in our country, in our state, and around the globe. And I see it as like a rebirth. It's a rebirthing for us to get back to the way it should be. It's a chance for us to regerminate, to regenerate, and to flourish and to thrive as educators and as teachers. But we need to do a lot of back work to really get there. And it's about saying no. It's about advocating for your own well-being as a teacher. It's about standing up for yourself and saying, this is not happening, or questioning why. Why are we doing it like this? Or why haven't I been put on that class? Or I've done all this work. What happens now? I really think it's time for us to take a stand and to have an open and honest conversation about how we're feeling, to take the emotion out of it, but to also be really open and honest about how we're feeling about the approach that has been taken or the decisions that are being made without either consultation or without that professionalism that happens. So this is a conversation that I love having about us as educators, us as teachers, us flourishing and thriving as educators. Because if we're choked out, if we're prevented from doing our job and from flourishing, then imagine the impact that has on our own well-being, on our mental health, on our health in general. But imagine the impact it's having on our families and our own students and our own children. We deserve more. So if you would love to have a conversation about teacher wellbeing and burnout, I invite you to send me a message on Facebook or Instagram. You can head over to Instagram. I'm kellybell.coach. Have a conversation with me about burnout and wellbeing. And if you also have a story to share or a strategy to share that's worked for you to help you rise from the flames, I'd also love to hear from you. But the book is a work in progress. There is a lot of work ahead, but I can't wait to shine a light on teacher wellbeing and burnout and provide you with lots of practical strategies to regenerate and to thrive and to flourish as a busy classroom teacher. Have the most amazing day. And if you're here in New South Wales and you have a few days to go, enjoy the rest of your term. But for much of the states, you guys are already on holidays. So enjoy, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks again.